Hey, in bed.
No Mercy, hailed as the pinnacle of Korean R-rated cinema, was also the first film since South Korea abolished its film censorship system in 1998 to face 3 separate demands for removal. The despair and suffocating atmosphere brought by the film feel like a throat constantly being gripped, making it hard to breathe. The extremely twisted murder methods are even more shocking to witness. Each time the killer commits a crime, he selects 2 adult women to assault, dismembers their bodies directly afterward, and mixes the parts of the 2 corpses together, making it extremely difficult for the police to solve the cases. However, the root of all these problems actually stems from an unjust trial. The male lead, Kang Min-ho, was originally a renowned forensic scientist, celebrated as South Korea's top authority in the field, with countless students under his guidance. One day, he received another request to examine a body and rushed to the first crime scene without delay. But upon arriving at the scene, the brutality of the situation shocked even him. South Korea's top forensic expert with 30 years of experience, a woman had been dismembered into 5 parts while still alive, with her right arm missing, and the only clue left behind was a set of shoe prints. Despite the horror, Kang Min-ho, relying on his professional composure, quickly calmed down, brought the body back to the dissection room, and began the autopsy. While examining the corpse, he remarked on how good the skin of the deceased woman was, saying it was such a pity that such a beautiful body would soon decay, showing no respect for the dead. After making these comments, he proceeded to dissect the body. However, Kang Min-ho did not know that every cut he made on this corpse would later deepen his despair. As Kang Min-ho methodically cut through the skin and internal organs of the body, the female officer Min Seo-young, who was assisting him, couldn't bear it any longer and ran out of the dissection room to vomit. Kang Min-ho was already accustomed to reactions like Min Seo-young's. After completing the autopsy, Kang Min-ho began analyzing the cause of death for the police. The victim, named Una, was likely a prostitute during her lifetime. She died from a skull fracture caused by a blunt force impact to the head. Sand, gravel, and seawater were found in her nostrils, mouth, ears, and inside her body. From this, it was deduced that the killer dismembered Una by the seaside and then discarded the body parts on a nearby riverbank. Therefore, the primary crime scene must have been a gravel area. Thus, the police were divided into 2 teams to begin the investigation. One team first located Una's boyfriend, Byung-do, who, as the closest person to Una, was naturally the primary suspect. He was taken to the police station for questioning, but Byung-do claimed he hadn't seen Una for a month and was gambling on the night of the murder, so he had no time to commit the crime. He also questioned why he would have any reason to kill Una. The police had no choice but to let him go, as there was no evidence linking him to the murder. Meanwhile, the other team went to a nearby gravel yard to search for clues. Fortunately, their efforts paid off. After 2.5 days of investigation, they discovered the missing severed arm buried in a sand pile. After finding the arm, Min Seo-young took photos of it and brought them to Kang Min-ho's house. As a devoted fan of his, she saw this as an opportunity to get closer to him. Upon entering, Min Seo-young noticed a photo on the wall and asked Kang Min-ho, "Is that your daughter?" Kang Min-ho replied, "Yes, she is currently studying in the United States and will return next week. You can meet her then." After this casual conversation, they moved on to the main topic. Min Seo-young first showed Kang Min-ho the photos of Una's right arm. After a brief examination, Kang Min-ho shared with her the findings he had gathered over the past 2 days. As she listened, Min Seo-young felt increasingly confused, unsure of what Kang Min-ho meant. Nevertheless, she returned to the police station to investigate further. She searched for the 3 locations on the computer and eventually discovered that an environmental organization was linked to all 3 sites. Subsequent, deeper investigation revealed that this environmental organization was protesting to prevent the operation of a concrete factory, and its leader had been organizing protests and demonstrations for years. So, Min Seo-young took the information she found and began analyzing it for her colleagues. There was an environmental group called I Love Venus that had been systematically and planfully demonstrating against that concrete factory for years. According to Min Seo-young's investigation, this so-called I Love Venus was actually based on a book. The general idea was, the established concrete factory was divided into 6 zones, which corresponded to the 6 parts into which a goddess named Venus was dismembered, and the locations where the killer dumped the body parts also aligned exactly with the severed limbs of Venus, creating a high degree of overlap. She then added, the author of the book was named Lee Sung-ho, who himself was disabled, matching the characteristic of the shoe prints found at the scene, which were deeper on one side. Hearing this, the captain roughly understood Min Seo-young's point and felt her reasoning was plausible. So, he charged Lee Sun-ho with the crime of organizing illegal protests, intending to bring him in for questioning. If he wasn't the killer, it wouldn't be a big deal, it would just serve as a warning. In a place like South Korea, which is small but has no shortage of unusual characters, finding someone is relatively easy. Soon, Min Seo-young and her colleagues located Lee Sun-ho at his workplace. Upon seeing Min Seo-young and the others, Lee Sun-ho remained surprisingly calm and asked them, "Are you here to arrest me? I take responsibility for what I've done." Min Seo-young and her team were taken aback by his immediate admission. They promptly brought Lee Sun-ho back to the police station. Min Seo-young then began interrogating Lee Sun-ho. Lee Sun-ho didn't hide anything, claiming he was the killer and detailing the methods and process of the murders. Meanwhile, Kang Min-ho was at the airport waiting for his daughter. He waited from the first flight until the last, but his daughter never appeared. Just as Kang Min-ho was at a loss, a man approached him and handed him an envelope, saying, "This is from Lee Sun-ho." At that moment, Kang Min-ho had no idea who Lee Sun-ho was, but when he opened the envelope, he was completely stunned. Instantly, he lost the pride of being South Korea's top forensic scientist and the composure he maintained while wielding a scalpel over corpses. The contents of the envelope were photos of his kidnapped daughter. Seeing this, Kang Min-ho rushed to chase after the man who had delivered the envelope. Just as he was frantically searching for any sign of the man, his phone rang. Answering the call, he found it was Min Seo-young on the line. She said, "We've caught the killer. It's a man named Lee Sun-ho." Hearing this, Kang Min-ho was instantly stunned. Sharp as he was, his first instinct was that this had to be a setup. He rushed to the police station without delay and went straight to Lee Sun-ho. Upon seeing Kang Min-ho, Lee Sun-ho acted as if he had known him for a long time and directly questioned him. "Why did you take so long? You've wasted my entire day." Kang Min-ho asked Lee Sun-ho, "Who are you? Where is my daughter?" Lee Sun-ho replied, "Who I am isn't important. What matters is your daughter's life." So Kang Min-ho asked Lee Sun-ho, "What do you want?" But Lee Sun-ho's response instantly enraged Kang Min-ho.
아니, 저 나름대로 소신 있게 오나를 이렇게 토막살인해서 죽이면 사람들이 의미에 대해서도 궁금해하고 그럴 줄 알았는데 별로 효과가 없더라고요. 그래서 곰곰이 생각을 해봤죠. 근데 대한민국 최고의 부검인 딸을 토막살인해서 개새끼 내 딸한테 무슨 일 생기나?
He pushed Kang Min-ho away and said, "I want to make a deal with you. Get me out of here within 3 days. If you succeed, I'll spare your daughter's life." Hearing this, Kang Min-ho thought it was utterly absurd. He said, "You've already confessed. The entire city is gathering evidence against you. How could I possibly get you out?" But Lee Sun-ho retorted, "If you can't do it, your daughter will die." Upon hearing this, Kang Min-ho could only sit down in a chair and solemnly ask Lee Sun-ho, "Who are you? Why are you doing this to me?" But Lee Sun-ho refused to answer, only saying, "You'd better start thinking about how to get me out of here." Realizing he couldn't risk his daughter's life, Kang Min-ho decided to go and devise a plan, but just as he stepped out, he ran into Min Seo-young, who had just returned from retrieving the murder weapon. So Kang Min-ho asked, "Did you find the murder weapon?" Min Seo-young replied, "Yes, we did. The tool used for dismemberment was an electric saw. Lee Sun-ho himself told us where to find it." But Kang Min-ho couldn't care less about whether Lee Sun-ho confessed voluntarily. He immediately asked, "Where is the murder weapon now?" Unaware of any abnormality, Min Seo-young casually replied, "It's currently in the evidence room." She then asked Kang Min-ho, "Weren't you supposed to pick up your daughter today? Why did you come back alone?" Kang Min-ho could only say, her return to the country was postponed. After saying that, he turned and left. After leaving, Kang Min-ho went straight to the evidence room. Seeing his student conducting research, he asked, "Did you find the murder weapon?" The student, completely unaware of Kang Min-ho's unusual behavior, directly showed it to him. Upon seeing the electric saw, Kang Min-ho suddenly hatched a plan. He turned and left the evidence room, returned home, took out a scalpel, and made a cut on his pet dog's leg. Meanwhile, Kang Min-ho's student was still reviewing other research reports when he suddenly received a call from Kang Min-ho. Over the phone, Kang Min-ho asked the student to wait for him in the dissection room to study the dissected body of Una together. The student obediently complied. As soon as the student left, Kang Min-ho seized the opportunity to rush into the evidence room and began searching for the electric saw used to dismember the body. He quickly found the saw, removed the blade, and immersed it in sulfuric acid to erase the original bloodstains. Then, he took out the dog blood he had prepared earlier and carefully applied it to the blade. After completing everything, he finally went to meet his student, though by now Kang Min-ho was drenched in sweat. At that moment, Min Seo-young happened to come by to ask Kang Min-ho for the autopsy report. She asked the student, "Has the blood test report come out yet?" The student replied, "It might take until tomorrow morning for the results." Kang Min-ho then made an excuse to send the student away and began talking with Min Seo-young. He analyzed for her. Lee Sun-ho may not necessarily be the suspect beyond doubt, and gave her several examples of why he might not have the ability to commit murder and dismemberment, such as his disability making it difficult to carry out such acts. Hearing this, Min Seo-young was confused, but Kang Min-ho continued, "We should focus on tangible evidence, like the autopsy report and the blood test results from the weapon." Min Seo-young started to feel that things were indeed suspicious, as if everything had been going too smoothly and naturally. Kang Min-ho's deception of Min Seo-young was driven by his need to save his daughter after all. Lies may not hurt, but the truth can be a sharp blade. After handling this, Kang Min-ho went to the prison and took out his phone, demanding that Lee Sun-ho call his accomplice outside. He needed to confirm his daughter's safety before proceeding further. Lee Sun-ho didn't hesitate and immediately picked up the phone to make the call.
난데 그 애는 잘 있지? 여기 자꾸 통화를 하고 싶어 하시는 분이 계셔가지고 좀 짜증나네. 그 애를 그냥 지금 죽여버릴 수 있겠냐?
거기 어디야? 우리 혜원한테 무슨 일 생기면 가만두자.
But when Kang Min-ho snatched the phone back, he realized Lee Sun-ho had tricked him. The call was never actually placed. Enraged, Kang Min-ho violently attacked Lee Sun-ho, nearly strangling him to death. Just then, the phone really rang.
여보세요.
아빠!
혜원아, 거기 어디야? 뭐 괜찮아?
이 사람이 날 죽이려 하나 봐. 살려줘.
아니야. 아무것도 하지 마. 아빠가 데리러 갈게. 조금만 기다려. 혜원아. 여보세요.
At that moment, Kang Min-ho felt utterly powerless for the first time in his life. He could hear his daughter's voice but was unable to rescue her from her ordeal. He had no choice but to sit down before Lee Sun-ho. His only hope now was that Lee Sun-ho would not harm his daughter, and he would continue trying to clear Lee Sun-ho's name. Kang Min-ho asked, "Lee Sun-ho, where is the murder weapon? I'll dispose of it." But Lee Sun-ho seemed to ignore Kang Min-ho's question, instead saying, "Tampering with evidence, fabricating false proof, aren't these things you excel at?" He then asked Kang Min-ho, "Why did you kill that woman?" Kang Min-ho was baffled by the question, but there was no time to dwell on it. He went directly to Una's home to search for useful clues. Soon, Kang Min-ho found a photo of Una with another woman, who was also a prostitute. Kang Min-ho had previously interacted with her, so he contacted her, offered her money, and planned to use her for his next scheme. Meanwhile, the test results for the blood on the swapped electric saw came back. The results showed it was not human blood but dog blood. Hearing this, Min Seo-young was stunned. It turned out Kang Min-ho was right, things couldn't be judged solely by surface appearances. The police department, now aware of this development, had no choice but to send officers to search Lee Sun-ho's home, hoping to find the object used to crush the victim's skull. Meanwhile, Kang Min-ho was looking for Una's boyfriend, Byung-do. He planned to use the prostitute to seduce him and obtain his DNA to frame him and eliminate Lee Sun-ho's suspicion. Just then, Min Seo-young called Kang Min-ho and asked, "Is the autopsy report ready?" Kang Min-ho delayed by claiming he was unwell. He also learned from Min Seo-young that the blood test results confirmed it was dog blood. Hearing this, Kang Min-ho felt relieved and quickly ended the call. He then hurried to Lee Sun-ho's home, hoping to find the murder weapon before the police. Upon arriving, Kang Min-ho searched every corner but found no trace of the weapon. Then, he noticed what seemed like a hidden compartment in the floor. He used a scalpel to pry it open, but the weapon was still not inside. He then looked at a photo frame nearby and noticed that the man pictured with Lee Sun-ho was the same man who had handed him the envelope that day. Just as Kang Min-ho was lost in thought, the sound of police sirens blared outside. The police had also arrived at the scene. Seeing this, Kang Min-ho had no choice but to hide immediately. After getting out of their cars, the police split into teams to search for the murder weapon. One of the officers entered the room where Kang Min-ho was hiding. Shortly after stepping inside, he found the scalpel Kang Min-ho had used on the floor. The curious officer began looking around, while Kang Min-ho trembled in hiding, afraid of being discovered. Fortunately, just then, the police outside found the weapon used to kill Una, and the officer in the room left to join them. Unbeknownst to Kang Min-ho, Min Seo-young had arrived at his home hoping to visit him and learn from him. To her surprise, she discovered the injured dog. After taking the dog to a veterinary hospital for examination, the conclusion was that the wound was extremely precise, clearly made intentionally with a professional scalpel. Hearing this, Min Seo-young was stunned but still couldn't believe that Kang Min-ho would help a murderer. The next day at work, however, she found a scalpel among the evidence collected by her colleagues. At this point, Min Seo-young had no choice but to consider the possibility that Kang Min-ho might truly be involved. She went to Kang Min-ho's student to verify whether he had left the laboratory at any point in the past few days. The student was confused by her question and replied, "The only time I left was that night when Kang Min-ho called me to the dissection room. Every other moment, even when using the restroom, I was in the laboratory." Hearing this, Min Seo-young confirmed her suspicion. The blood on the electric saw had been swapped by Kang Min-ho, but she couldn't understand why Kang Min-ho would help a heinous murderer. Meanwhile, Kang Min-ho went to the police station to meet with Lee Sun-ho. He said, "I was too late. The police found the murder weapon before I could. There's nothing I can do now." But Lee Sun-ho remained remarkably calm and said, "This isn't something I need to worry about. Figure it out yourself." Hearing this, Kang Min-ho was furious, but there was little he could do. His daughter was still in their hands. Outside, the police were discussing the newly found weapon. The blood on it did not match Una's, and its size didn't match the head trauma, indicating that this blunt object was used to kill someone else. The captain said, "Just have someone buy a blunt object that matches the trauma size. This scum is in our hands now, and we can't let him go free." After finishing his interrogation of Lee Sun-ho, Kang Min-ho was about to leave when he ran into Min Seo-young, who had been waiting for him outside. Seeing Kang Min-ho, Min Seo-young immediately confronted him. "Why did you fabricate evidence? Why did you tamper with the blood traces?" Kang Min-ho stopped and could only say, "I can't tell you right now. Please give me a little more time." But Min Seo-young, committed to justice, was not about to let him go. She was ready to handcuff him and bring him to justice. However, Kang Min-ho revealed that his daughter had been kidnapped by Lee Sun-ho. Hearing this, Min Seo-young was speechless. Kang Min-ho continued, "If Lee Sun-ho is prosecuted, I will never see my daughter again." Upon hearing this, Min Seo-young lowered her handcuffs and reluctantly let Kang Min-ho leave. After Kang Min-ho left, Min Seo-young used her position to investigate Kang Min-ho's past. She discovered that a case Kang Min-ho had previously handled was directly related to Lee Sun-ho. She went to a colleague in the intelligence department and obtained detailed information about the trial. The colleague quickly revealed the truth. Lee Sun-ho's sister was gang-raped by 3 high school students and later drowned herself in a river. However, the suspects came from powerful families, and due to insufficient evidence, all 3 were acquitted on the spot. The victim, Una, had been a witness in that case, and Kang Min-ho had been the forensic scientist involved. Hearing this, Min Seo-young couldn't shake the creepy feeling that something was seriously wrong. She went directly to where Lee Sun-ho was being held and confronted him. "Did you kidnap Kang Min-ho's daughter?" She added, "How can you blame Kang Min-ho for that trial? He based his conclusions on scientific evidence." Lee Sun-ho didn't say much in response. Instead, he handed over his crutch and said, "This crutch is the real murder weapon." This move left Min Seo-young completely bewildered. She couldn't understand what Lee Sun-ho was trying to do. She took the crutch to Kang Min-ho's student for analysis and, to her surprise, it was indeed the murder weapon. Meanwhile, after leaving the police station, Kang Min-ho quickly located Una's boyfriend, Byung-do. He then called the prostitute he had previously enlisted and tasked her with seducing Byung-do to obtain a sample of his DNA. The prostitute successfully retrieved Byung-do's DNA and handed it over to Kang Min-ho. Kang Min-ho paid her for her efforts, but just as Kang Min-ho was about to leave, Min Seo-young approached him. It turned out she had witnessed his entire transaction with the prostitute. So Min Seo-young asked, "Kang Min-ho, what's in the bottle?" But Kang Min-ho didn't know how to answer her. Just then, Min Seo-young was struck from behind and knocked unconscious by a man, the same man who had previously delivered the envelope to Kang Min-ho. The man warned Kang Min-ho, "Hurry up and overturn the case, or you'll be collecting your daughter's corpse. This woman was too troublesome, so I dealt with her for you." Seeing this, Kang Min-ho could only swallow his anger and drive directly to the dissection room. He pulled out Una's body, applied Byung-do's DNA to key areas, and then fabricated a false autopsy report. As he looked at what he had done, Kang Min-ho finally remembered a case from over a decade ago. His daughter had been diagnosed with a critical illness that could only be treated in the United States. with surgery costs astronomically high, far beyond what he could afford. At that time, he was handling the case involving Lee Sun-ho's sister. The defendants came from wealthy and influential families. They approached Kang Min-ho and said, "If you're willing to help, we'll cover all your daughter's medical expenses." Helpless, Kang Min-ho ultimately violated his professional ethics and committed an unconscionable act. He tampered with Lee Sun-ho's sister's body and altered the autopsy report to make it look like she had consented rather than been assaulted. Meanwhile, Una, who had witnessed the assault, claimed that Lee Sun-ho's sister had always been promiscuous at school and was never truthful. Clearly, she had also been bribed by the powerful. This led to the acquittal of the 3 men who had assaulted Lee Sun-ho's sister. Afterwards, Lee Sun-ho's family faced constant public scorn and finger-pointing. As an adult, Lee Sun-ho took matters into his own hands. He killed the 3 wealthy young men who had assaulted his sister, then began his series of revenge plots against Kang Min-ho. Just as Kang Min-ho was recalling these events, the police encountered a new problem. Lee Sun-ho was now retracting his confession, claiming everything he had said earlier was fabricated nonsense. The police responded, "We have solid evidence the crutch is undeniable proof, and so are the shoe prints at the crime scene. How do you explain that?" But Lee Sun-ho remained calm. During Kang Min-ho's previous visit, he had been coached on how to address the shoe print issue. "I live about a kilometer from the crime scene, so it's normal for me to occasionally take walks there. As for the crutch, I'm not the only person on earth who uses that kind. Does it have killer written on it?" His lawyer added. Lee Sun-ho's earlier confession was forced out of him by police coercion. The 2 officers were stunned. To their further shock, Kang Min-ho's autopsy report was now released, showing clear male DNA on the body, but it didn't match Lee Sun-ho's. Instead, it belonged to Una's boyfriend, Byung-do. The captain could only curse under his breath. In the end, they had no choice but to release Lee Sun-ho and immediately arrest Una's boyfriend, Byung-do. As soon as Lee Sun-ho was released, he was picked up by the man who had delivered the messages for him. It turned out this man was none other than his sister's childhood friend, which was why he had helped Lee Sun-ho all along. And just after Lee Sun-ho left, Kang Min-ho secretly followed close behind. Upon returning home, Lee Sun-ho seemed to have known Kang Min-ho would come, as he had already prepared tea for him. As Kang Min-ho entered, he asked Lee Sun-ho, "Where is my daughter? I've done everything you asked, and regarding your sister's death, I am truly sorry." Finally hearing an apology from Kang Min-ho, Lee Sun-ho stood up and struck him with his crutch, knocking him to the ground. As Kang Min-ho struggled to get up, he desperately apologized to Lee Sun-ho, explaining, "I had no choice back then. I had to save my daughter, but my daughter is innocent. If you have any grievances, direct them at me. I beg you, please don't harm my daughter." Hearing this, Lee Sun-ho replied, "It's too late for that now." Kang Min-ho was stunned. He had heard the answer he feared most from Lee Sun-ho's lips. At that moment, Kang Min-ho's rage reached its peak. He violently attacked Lee Sun-ho, trying to drag him away to find his daughter, but Lee Sun-ho remained unmoved. In despair, Kang Min-ho decided to kill Lee Sun-ho outright. Just as Lee Sun-ho was nearing death, he revealed the location of Kang Min-ho's daughter. Upon hearing this, Kang Min-ho immediately rushed to his car and drove toward the location. Just as Kang Min-ho was rushing over, Min Seo-young, fresh out of the hospital, got word that Lee Sun-ho had already been released by the police. Furious, she rushed to Lee Sun-ho's house to arrest him again, unaware that he wasn't home. As Min Seo-young was about to enter, Lee Sun-ho's brother-in-law spotted her and ambushed her from behind. After a struggle, the brother-in-law nearly strangled Min Seo-young to death, but she ultimately managed to turn the tables and kill him. Getting to her feet, Min Seo-young began searching the house and noticed a room concealed by a red curtain. When she approached and looked inside, she was utterly shocked. She muttered to herself, "So this is Lee Sun-ho's revenge." Meanwhile, Kang Min-ho finally arrived at the location Lee Sun-ho had described, but as he was about to enter, Min Seo-young stopped him, urging him not to go inside. She said, "Lee Sun-ho planned all of this," but Kang Min-ho ignored her and rushed into the room. What he saw inside shattered him. His daughter was submerged in a rose-filled pool, lying there peacefully as if she were an exquisite work of art. Seeing his daughter in the pool, Kang Min-ho didn't want her to bloom in violence or become a flower at dawn. He just wanted to hold her. But the moment he lifted her, something even more unbearable than her death unfolded. Only her limbs and head remained. Her entire torso was missing. Remembering the reassembled body of Una, Kang Min-ho let out an agonized roar of despair. Unable to believe what was before him, he had personally dissected his own daughter's body, cut her flesh piece by piece, and defiled her flawless form with the DNA of a despicable man. At that moment, Kang Min-ho descended into madness. After leaving the room, he saw Lee Sun-ho waiting outside for him.
고통스러우시죠? 어떻게 해요? 따님 몸에 몹쓸 짓을 했으니. 사람의 고통이라는 게 마음속 고통보다 기억 속 고통이 더 크더군요.
Unable to contain himself, Kang Min-ho drew Min Seo-young's gun and shot Lee Sun-ho dead, shocking Min Seo-young who stood nearby. With Lee Sun-ho dead, Kang Min-ho turned the gun toward himself. Without hesitation, he pulled the trigger, seeking redemption for his deceased daughter and Lee Sun-ho's sister.